Oops. Oh, hold on. I didn't see that earlier. Hold on. That's better. Hey guys, welcome to my second stream of the day. Another live She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. And most importantly, get into the chat and let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. The first show that ended like an hour and a half ago, we actually talked about like more like transfer rumor type stuff, Isak, Mateus Cunha, and João Pedro, as well as Arda Güler. So if you want to talk more about transfers or you want to see a show more about transfers, that would be a better show. But still watch this one. This show is more about sporting and also wrapping up things with Forest, because that was probably our best game of the season. No, it's not even probably. It was our best performance of the season and our best result. And so off of the back of that, there has been a lot of, conversations around the selection or potential selection headache for Mikel Arteta, because we've been asking for good football and we got it. So should, is there a way that we can maintain this level? Or do certain players have to sit out in order for us to play this way? That's what we're kind of going to discuss today. And also, the top of the show, we have got to talk about Tierney being back in the group for the game against Sporting. Listen, two things can be true at the same time. I love Kieran Tierney down. He was my favorite player at the beginning of this like new Arsenal. I was fully thinking that he was going to be our captain. I said it on Twitter that I think in a time where quality moments did not come around often, he gave us quite a few, and he just was so Arsenal like coded. And I think we all appreciated him for that. Whether it's the injuries or the fact that we've switched the way that we play, he doesn't necessarily suit Arsenal as much as he did in the past. So him being in the squad for Sporting, for me, doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything. But there are a lot of Arsenal fans that would probably love to see Tierney reintegrated, or they want to see his profile in the team. And we've had a lot of conversations around the left back and, our fullback options. And does everybody have to be a center back or a fullback or a center back or a midfielder? Can we not just get like a traditional fullback? Would that not suit Tierney, Martinelli better? And so this is interesting because if Tierney's in the squad, there are going to be people that want to see him. Is there an opportunity for him to get some minutes? Maybe. I think it really depends on how important Arteta thinks he's going to be, because we have a lot of injuries to that position, and we have like a game against Palace coming up in the Carabao Cup, And that could be an opportunity for Tierney to like start. Um, because he started Zinchenko there. He started MLS there. So that seems to be like if I want to give somebody minutes, um, that could be like a good, opportunity for him. It all just depends on who's available. But with Tomiyasu out, and continuing to be out, Tierney will probably continue to make squads. So you would imagine that, if you got down to it, you'd love for him to have some minutes. So yeah, I know people are super excited about Tierney being in the team. And is there a road back, for this profile? Was it just that he wasn't good enough, or did Arteta just change the team and the way that we played so much that it didn't suit him? Because I mean, Aubameyang looked bad in a Mikel system, so you could make an argument that it's more just the system didn't suit him rather than him being a poor player. My main issue with Tierney was never like the fact that he couldn't invert, because I'm like, that's a suicide mission anyway. That's not the kind of player that he is. It was just his injuries. I thought his injuries were just like tragic. It's funny because Tomiyasu is, I think, worse than Tierney. Honestly, I think they're both bad, but Tomiyasu will be out. It's like he doesn't even exist. So we have some injury prone left backs, but yeah, I always thought Tierney's injuries were his biggest thing. Like, because you could always use a Tierney in the team. Tierney to me is more useful than a Cedric. And we had Cedric in the team last season that didn't get any playing time, but the odd little playing time that he got, it was like, so Tierney being, a backup guy with a good attitude and stuff is not like the worst thing in the world. It's just whether or not when we do need him, will he be there, because his injuries are just they're just so frequent, and I feel so bad for him. He even spent time at Sociedad injured, and that was just rough, So yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think about it, because there's always a way back. Like, you could imagine that, like, if it's not Mikel and a new manager comes in, um, there's players that are out or not involved that could potentially be involved. So I feel like sometimes it's just a choice whether or not a player is utilized or not, because again, Mikel has a really injury prone Tomiyasu. So, I don't know if it's so much that Tierney doesn't have the quality. I think it's the way that we play really rendered him kind of like useless in the team. Because Tierney's a good player. But for me, the injuries were so bad. Gunnar says, second stream in a matter of hours. Jess is having a field day. Just trying to get as much content out there as possible. I've been feeling a lot more like energized and, ready to create content around Arsenal more lately. I think at the beginning of the season, I was very much so going through something. So, yeah, and I'm actually collaborating with people again, because I was kind of like alone, like, I don't know. I went through a long period of not collaborating and just kind of like doing my own shows. But this week, I'll be on Judge Mo's channel again on Thursday. And then I'm also going to be doing stuff with Dan Potts on Wednesday. And we'll see if Diluted gets back to me, because he may hate me now, because if you were on Twitter, then you'll know why he might hate me. But yeah, we'll see if he wants to do a show or not. But yeah, I'm feeling a lot more excited about creating content again. John Donut says, hey, Jess, hello to you as well. Vig says, MLS over KT. MLS over KT personally, we are seriously discussing KT in 2024. He didn't do much at Sociedad as well. Bhoy says, we are a fucking charity. Who is excited about Tierney being back? A lot of people are. Tierney is somebody who's very well liked by the fan base. I don't think people have ill will or like any sort of negative feelings about Tierney. He just had the injuries, So yeah, Boy says MLS should be miles ahead. I mean, MLS is also a player that should probably be getting midfield minutes for Arsenal too. So Jacob says Cedric was barely in the team. He was playing youth football mainly, but he was in the squad. He was a part of the first team. And so, if you do get to a point, like I know Cedric played against in the Champions League in that dead rubber, like Tierney is better than Cedric. And that's my point, is that like it's not like he play a big role. There are players in our team that are going to be there but not play massive roles. He could do that, for the rest of the season. Um, but when we got down to him, would he be there? Because he's just so injury prone. Marco says, catching alive. Glad you're here. Make sure you're in the comment section in the chat, letting me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. Diehard Gunner says KT is not good enough. Nobody wants Tierney back in the squad. Same as Ramsey. We have to move on. Well, I mean, you're wrong. A lot of people like Tierney. So you don't like Tierney. A lot of people do like Tierney. I know that because most of my Twitter feed, most of the people that I follow and the people that follow me are Arsenal fans, and people are generally excited to see him in the squad. But is that the same as people feeling like he needs to be starting games or he needs to be integrated in above anybody else? No, and I feel like that's the nuance in the conversation. It's whenever you want to move on from somebody, there's no nuance to the conversation. It's just everybody hates him, get him out. That's not true. A lot of Arsenal fans love Tierney, just like a lot of people love Emile. A lot of people love Martinelli. Those players, whether they're here or not, had a big part to play in the resurgence of this Arsenal side. So there's a lot of nostalgia and, Disney kind of story around these players. So again, the idea is that nobody wants to see Tierney or nobody is excited about him is fundamentally false, because when the picture came up this morning that Tierney was back in the squad, a lot of the comments were happy. So there's a huge difference between I don't want him in the team and nobody wants him in the team. Tierney is very well liked. I'll tell you that right now. Very well liked. So yeah, like I'm looking at this one right now. People are saying at last he's back in the squad. Jorge is saying the defense is building up for a short impact games coming up. Akinola said that's great. It's been long. We saw him play after a short stint at Real Sociedad. Next comment is he should be given an opportunity as well. There's still a player in there. C says good news. Glad to see him back. I miss KT. People are saying let's go. So again, a lot of people are excited about Kieran Tierney. So yeah, Gunnar 217 says we love KT. Thought he would end up being our captain. Remember the banger against West Brom in the snow, and I think that's kind of the thing about KT and like and Emile too, is that both of them are big parts of that resurgence, and so there's a lot of connection to them, especially Emile because he was Hale End. Does that mean these players need to stay in the team forever? No. Does it mean that we shouldn't move on from them? No. So I think there's room for nuance in the conversation, but he's going to be in the squad as long as our back line, Ben White is out and Tomiyasu is just like nowhere to be found. So right now you have MLS who had a knock, so he wasn't even available for the Nottingham Forest game. Kivior, who, I mean, this is probably a really good question, but if it got down to it and there was no Kala or no Ricky, no Timber, or Timber had to play on the right because that's basically the situation that we're in right now because he's our only right back. And, there was no Zinchenko and it came down to it. And the only thing that was there was Tierney or Kivior. Who would you play at left back? So, because that's an interesting one because I know Arteta, you can't pull one over my eyes. You don't like Kivior like that at left back. So it's interesting because at some stage we may get down to, we may get down to that because we get so many injuries, and I wonder what Arteta would choose. Burmese says rotation is good, especially if AFC goes far in the Carabao FA Cup competition, so Tierney could be needed. I mean, in the times that I saw Cedric, I'd be okay if that was Tierney from last season, because it wasn't nothing was consequential. Do you know what I mean? And boy, I know that I feel like you're being super harsh because you want MLS in the team. And I kind of get that, but like, it is what it is, MLS I think is just a little bit a step behind Nwaneri, and Nwaneri wasn't even getting playing time. So there's so many players that can play in that left back position that I think if you're worried about MLS not getting playing time or somebody playing over him, you better buckle up and get ready for it. Because he played Zinchenko over MLS for the last Carabao Cup game. So, I mean, there's a very much so a chance that you will see other players playing over MLS in that left back position. Jacob says Timber is not a left back. He can play there. His best position is right back. If Tierney starts more games than MLS, something is wrong. Marco says, knowing our luck this year, that scenario will probably happen. And I'm telling you, it's that scenario probably could happen. You know, Boy says I'm playing Josh Nichols or MLS over both Tierney and Kivior. Die Hard Gunner says, because Zinchenko is better than MLS, what are we doing here? Listen, we have a lot of all I'm saying is that like there honestly, I don't even think there should be that much like any that much energy in the comment section about this. It's Kieran Tierney, it's somebody that a lot of people like. Um it's weird that anybody would think that he's very well liked. He is like there's no way around it. He's very well liked. So and he's only in the sporting team because Ben White and Tomiyasu are not in. So we're not gonna really see him. So I don't think we need to have like any sort of like Tierney is shit, conversations. Like it's not that deep. But it is nice to see his face because I feel like people like Tierney, he's not Zinchenko. Jacob says, I don't mind Tierney, but he shouldn't start over anyone but Kivior. Gunnar 217 says, genuinely curious if we can only invert one fullback to accommodate KT, i.e. Timber inverting or KT just as a normal. He can only play as a normal left back. That's the truth. So if you try to invert him, it's going to be a long day. Big says, not saying Katie is rubbish, but we've moved on from him. That's it. And that's why he's so far down the pecking order. Again, the only reason why he's in there, it's not even like rewriting history. Like nobody's saying that he should stay after the season. He's just in the team because other guys are not around. Like they're not fit. So yeah, but there is a chance that if you're in the squad, you might get playing time. Remember, we got all the way down to Kivior and MLS at the end of that Liverpool game. So yeah, there might be a chance that he'll play some minutes because you're in the team, but I don't think he'll be starting over. He's not going to start over Zinchenko for sure. He's not going to start over Ricky. So we'll see. We will see. Will he start over Kivior? I don't know because Arteta doesn't like Kivior. I'm sorry. He doesn't. It's as soon as Zinchenko can walk on one foot, he's in. Jacob says West Ham winning. That's good. Jacob says I remember when Tierney fell over himself. The Arsenal perspective says howdy, all Gooners. Hello to you as well. I remember when Tierney fell over himself. I remember that too. Again, you're kidding yourself if you think Tierney is not well liked within the fan base. I mean, the first time that he steps on the pitch, I guarantee he gets a standing ovation. That is like he is one of the most well liked players. He just is injury prone and we've moved beyond him. So yeah. Make sure you guys are smashing the likes. So selection headaches for the sporting game. I had a comment come through on my tweet about Marino because I asked people and like obviously I'd love to know what you guys think too, that I said thoughts on Marino, what was your opinion when we signed him and has that changed? And tons of like starting to settle in. Let's not judge him yet. He needs to adapt. Still needs a lot more from him. He needs to do more. Many of the fans who judged him in the first 2 games with no preseason and an injury will be eating their words. When we signed him, I felt like we just settled on him rather than getting someone we actually wanted. His initial performances left me feeling like he wasn't going to work out in the Prem, but now he seems to be settling in. Hope that continues. So very honest, responses here. And I love it because it's like everything ranging from you're going to eat your words to he's still not good enough, which I can understand all of those reactions because, he wasn't the player that we thought we were going to get, or we were hoping that we were going to get. So obviously there is a little bit of trepidation there, or just like, let's see, how he goes. But the one that stuck out to me the most was this comment from Paul. And he said, I'm going to be honest. Rice does not walk into this team anymore. He has real competition now. And my response to that was interesting. I think Rice and Kai were rested for Sporting. Now, James B did a video on technicians and how having those technicians in the team against Nottingham Forest unlocked, a style of football that a lot of Arsenal fans wanted us to go back to. Remember, me and Deluded did a show, and we talked about like the things that we wanted to see against Forest, and obviously some of those didn't really come to fruition because like Rice and Partey didn't start, Kai also didn't start or play, so it was mostly just about like clean sheet, which we got, and then also playing better football and creating chances, and we did those things. But there's a direct, there's a direct correlation, or at least like people are saying there's a direct correlation with like having Jorginho and Jesus in versus like having Rice and Kai in. And I found that very interesting because, I remember when we played well against Leicester, and Trossard played well in the 10, that there were very similar comments to this about how Odegaard was going to have to work his way back into the team, and, we're better without him or whatever, only for a couple of days to go by and for us to realize that we need these players, or like Odegaard is really important to the team. Now, I don't think Kai and Rice are as fundamental to the team as Saka and Odegaard, but I do think that like we have one good performance against a team that we should be beating, and then all of a sudden the players that didn't play are no longer useful or never played well for us, or we never played good football with them. And a lot of people were shitting their pants because Jorginho was going to start, and the best part of our performance, which was the first half, Jorginho played and played well. So, it's 1 minute, Jesus is washed and Jorginho is shit. And then the next minute, Kai and Rice can't get back into the team. I think we're really like kind of a little bit like reactionary because it's Nottingham Forest and we should be whooping them at home. But we're playing against Sporting, which is away from home, which is a much bigger test for Arsenal than Nottingham Forest at home. And Arteta, may have a selection headache. Maybe you think that, and let me know in the comment section that Jesus played so well and, the team played so well that we should just start the same team or play the same team, because that's the only way that we can play good football, or that it's nice to be able to rotate, but when we're going to go away from home and play against, a really good team in Sporting, or, away from home in Europe, a team that beat City 4-1, that we're probably going to end up bringing in Kai and Rice, and those players will most likely play. Because Martinelli also didn't play that game. So again, Trossard was a bum before that game. Jesus was a bum. Jorginho was a bum. Now all of a sudden, and Marino was also a bum. And all of a sudden, those four players are guaranteed starters, and Kai and Rice can't get back into the team. But what does that mean for Martinelli? So it's interesting. Does Arteta have a selection headache? Should he use the Nottingham Forest game as something to like pick off of? Because I think the maybe the takeaway from Nottingham Forest is not so much that we can't play any sort of decent football with Rice and Kai, because that's not true. Because otherwise, post Dubai doesn't exist, because they both played in all of those games, and we were whooping teams 5 and 6-0. But maybe it's that he should trust the squad more, and that he also should be able to, based on the opposition, be able to get more technical or more physical and not always use the same type of 11. Because I actually think that's a bigger takeaway, is that against a team like Nottingham Forest, who's, sat in a little bit more, that maybe we needed that additional like Jesus in there to give us almost like an additional attacking midfielder to open up those angles and, give us more freedom up front. Maybe that was more of the messaging, maybe, you know what I mean, than Kai and Rice should never play again, or, they have competition, because before this game, people were having absolute heart attacks about the lineup. So I'm interested to understand how we went from, you know, these players are trash, Trossard, Marino, Jorginho, and Jesus, and now how Kai and Rice can't get back into the team off of one position or one game against Nottingham Forest, you know? So it's very, very interesting how quickly it flips, and how we also forget that some of the best football that we played under Mikel Arteta in 2024 um, included both Kai and Rice in those teams. And we played good football, and nobody said that we couldn't play good football with them. So very interesting. I really don't think that we have selection headache, but it would I don't think we have a selection headache, but it'd be nice to maybe feel like we could utilize the players in the squad a little bit more. And I think that's the takeaway from the game against Nottingham Forest, is maybe you can trust some of those players more. Um, Diehard Gunner says, who would you drop to play for Rice based on performances this calendar year? I mean, based on this calendar year of 2024, not only was he good in the 6 for us, but he was also good in the 8. So it's been, 3 months since the beginning of the season. So 11 games versus a whole year or 8 months of last season. Rice still starts in my 11, and Marino drops out. If you have to start Partey, but you guys know my ultimate feeling on our midfield is that at some stage we need to get to the point where Rice is playing in the 6. That's not really the conversation that I'm trying to have, because we've had that conversation a million times and it goes nowhere. But I wouldn't drop Rice, because if you're talking about based on this calendar year didn't start in August of this season. It started August of last season, and he was one of our best players. He was almost our player of the season. This is somebody that's, you know, like I don't he was one of our best players last season. He was top 4. So, yeah, I guess that would mean that Marino drops out, but yeah, you guys know how I feel about it. CE says people have very short memories about Tierney. Makes me think you guys are a bunch of new school Mikel fans. Uh, I think with Tierney, the like I said, the main issue is not so much about. I don't think he lacks quality. I think he's a certain type of fullback that Arteta doesn't utilize. So yeah. Jacob says we needed Marino and Calafiori. Don't know how people don't see it. We do, but then also, you know, people were saying that Jorginho couldn't start in this team or was asked, and then he played well. So I think the thing with the problem that we have with the team is that our left-hand side doesn't work with all right footers, which, makes sense. You know what I mean? So it's like the left-hand side is obviously going to work better with a left-footed player, or left-footed players. And so when we haven't had that, we've looked weird. And I think that's where having like Timber and Rice on that side doesn't help give us width. It doesn't give us different angles. There were times where Calafiori and Marino were under pressure on that side, and we're able to figure out how to unlock it or to get out of those tight positions, because they could actually use their left foot to open up different angles. When you have Rice and Timber over there, you're really limited. People know how to cut off the angle so that you can't go to a certain direction. And so I agree that Marino and Calafiori open up the left-hand side, but our most balanced midfield is always going to be Marino on the left and Odegaard on the right, and then one of the DMs. And you have 2 aging DMs, and then you have your young DM that you spent 100 and something million on. And so that's why I always feel like the decision eventually will need to be made. Marino still isn't like that. Marino just shows you what balance in your midfield can get you. That's what he's showing. He's not showing like he's the upgrade that we've always needed, or, because Marino is not the type of player that I feel like is a marquee that's going to take us to another level. Just giving us balance though makes us a better team, which is something that eluded us all of last season, and I told you guys that. Having Kai as your left center mid or having Declan as your left center mid, it imbalances your midfield in a way that it's unusable. So just having a left-footed player that knows how to play in the 8 in his natural position gives you balance, and that just instantly makes us better because we didn't have a balanced midfield. But Marino's not the marquee signing that we were looking for. So Arteta has a situation on his hands now where I personally do not think that Rice and Partey work that well. I think when Arteta sets up the team with Rice and Partey, he makes them so far away from each other that they can't connect. And then it's like they're on two completely different pages. It leaves Partey on an island by himself, and no matter what you think about him, he's not the type of player that's going to stop transitions. So he's by himself, and it's different than the way that we play when it's Jorginho and Rice, where they're more closer together, which is what we saw from January to April of 2024, which was probably our best period under Mikel Arteta. So he has a situation where his left-hand side is not going to work really without, not at its best, without Calafiori and Marino, but he has two DMs that are totally different that he can't seem to choose between. The player that he bought for 100 and something million that has never played with a balanced midfield, and Partey, who's playing well right now. So it's, you know, I don't know what he's going to do because I just feel like this is a situation that just needs like an executive decision. Um, but what we can't do is continue to play Partey, Rice, and Odegaard because I don't really think it works. I'll be really honest with you, but I don't even know if Marino and Calafiori were the biggest story from Nottingham Forest. I think obviously they made the left-hand side tick better and Marino balanced the midfield. But I actually think the biggest difference between the way that we play with, before and the way that we played against Nottingham Forest was our forwards were actually moving. There was actual movement up front and players that people did not like before that game, and Jesus and Trossard were actually getting onto different sides, and Odegaard was also floating to the left, Marino was floating to the right, and we just had more fluidity. And I'm not sure that that cannot exist with different players because again, we played really good football with Martinelli. Martinelli is not Trossard, so I think it's more about Arteta allowing the players, whoever they are, to connect with each other, switch positions, be more fluid. Because to me, that was the biggest takeaway of the Nottingham Forest game. I'm not surprised that Marino coming in and Calafiori coming in make us a better team. But what I was surprised by was that even with Trossard and Jesus in there, all of a sudden, Arteta allowed Saka to drift to the left, Odegaard to drift to the left, Trossard drifted to the right, Marino drifted to the right, which is something that we haven't seen in a long time. So yeah, it's interesting. Like obviously the left-hand side was much better, but I mean the fluidity. The fluidity is what I missed. So yeah. Jacob says Krava and Williams, two different players. Mickey says, why are you always so quick to judge? Just judge what? What am I so quickly to judge? It's funny because what am I quickly judging? I don't really understand. You have to explain that. Jacob says Saka didn't go on the left, but yeah, I think he did float or he's at least coming a little bit more central. But yeah, if he didn't float, but you guys get what I'm saying. We were a lot more fluid, and something that I've been asking for months is our left winger and our right winger need to get closer together, and everybody needs to get closer together and create those triangles so that we can be more fluid. But it was like before that, everybody was on like a completely different like world. Like they weren't anywhere near each other. And when we played well 2 years ago, people were closer together. When we played well post Dubai, guys were closer together. And so that was my biggest takeaway because I'm like, just do that all the time, you know? Just do that all the time. That's how I feel about it. But yeah. Burmy says, Jess, who would be your starting 11 against Sporting? I mean, I feel like I would start I mean, the same back line for sure. That's our best back line, and I love Ben White, but that's our best back line. Um, those guys are stamped and approved. Saka, Odegaard, um, I feel like Sporting have a really good transition threat, and one thing that they really City really struggled with was stopping them on transition. Gyökeres and them were just flying through them and they were just killing them. And so I definitely have Rice in this game. I know people all of a sudden think Rice is not a good player, but I definitely have Rice in. I prefer him at the 6, but I guess I'll take him at left center mid, but drop him in closer to Partey because there's no reason if you have him further up in that first line, then Partey's still gonna be by himself. Partey, playing well right now, and then, yeah, like I said, Odegaard, Saka, Kai Havertz comes back in, um, and I mean, I don't really wanna see I mean, I love Trossard, I think he played well, but I guess you have to go with Martinelli. Um, yeah, that's probably what I'd go with. But my only caveat is, like I said, in midfield, just drop Rice closer to Partey because the whole point of Rice is that he can win the ball back and he can carry. He can't carry when he's already so far up. He can carry into open space when he's further back. And he can also help Partey and not leave him on an island by himself. But one of the things that stood out to me when they played against City is that they just ran through, and so one of Sporting's biggest threats is their transition threat. And so yeah, that would mean bringing Rice back in, um, Partey, Odegaard, and yeah, the front line, Havertz, Saka. Um, actually, I'm going back on that. I'm actually going to start Trossard over Martinelli, and I think that's just because Kai Havertz and Trossard have a better relationship, and also Rice and Trossard have a better relationship. Um, Martinelli, Rice, and Kai Havertz don't combine, and so you got to balance something out. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with Trossard. Um, harsh on Nelly, but Nelly can come in and do the when they're on tired legs. But I'm big on relationships, and I just don't think I've ever seen Martinelli and Kai combine, and Rice and Martinelli don't combine either. Um, and to make up for the lack of creative player that you're going to have in that left center mid because Rice is going to be more of a DM. You gotta add Trossard because you may not like him, but he's more of a creative player than Martinelli. I don't like Kai, Rice, and Nelly. I despise it. I don't think it works. It irks me just as much as Jorginho and Zinchenko together irked me. It doesn't work. They don't combine. So, yeah, that's probably what I'd go with. Um, but yeah, RS says you're glazing Jorginho's performance when he actually needed to be saved from himself because he can't win the ball back without committing a foul. He's so finished defensively. I mean, he did play well. Fundamentally, he played well, and he did need to come off because he made those 2 fouls, and yeah, he probably would have got sent off if he had fouled another time. But that's never stopped you guys from liking other people's performances that were primarily only good because of what they did on the ball. So Jorginho played well, and it's not so much that the thing is you can only be mad at players for not doing things that they actually physically can do. And so what football fans do is they'll be mad at you for not be having something that they physically can't do anyway. So if you're a slow player or you don't have legs like Jorginho, people are going to be mad at you for not having legs and not being quick. So I'm not going to be upset with Jorginho for not being able to do the things that we already know he can't do. That's why he's third down the list. That's why he's down the list, is because he has the least legs out of all of our DMs. But fundamentally, for what Jorginho is good at, he did really well. And you can't take that away from him. Jesus had a good performance by his standards because nobody expects him to score goals. But He was decent in that first half. You can't take that away from him. I'm not going to get mad at Jesus for being what I know he is. That's a good Jesus performance that he had against Nottingham Forest. So I think if you don't like Jorginho and you don't think he should be playing, there's really there's nothing really wrong with that, but I do feel like people are disingenuous. I feel if you don't like Jorginho, then it's like, or you don't want him to play, then you're dishonest about his performances. He's not going to start over Partey. He's not. So you don't have to worry about that. So you don't have to be dishonest about his performances. He was fine. He was good. It can't be, I remember there were performances earlier on in the season where Partey was good on the ball, but poor off the ball because fitness-wise he wasn't up to it. But no one cared because they only cared about what he did on the ball. So why doesn't Jorginho get that grace, also knowing that he doesn't have legs? I'm not going to be mad at Trossard because he can't run past someone. He's not fast, so Jorginho doesn't have legs, but for what he's good at, he was really, really good against Nottingham Forest. I don't think, honestly, I don't think that can be undermined. I really don't think there's any way to look at that performance that he had and say that it wasn't good. I think, yeah, I think if you think that he didn't play well, it's mostly because you just don't like him. So you can't see anything good that he was doing. I don't even like Jesus, but he did do good things in that first half that you can't take away from him. He's just not a finisher. And so knowing in my heart that he was never going to score, I wasn't even mad at his performance because I was like, well, at least he was combining with the front line and creating angles and, doing those types of things. So yeah, Jacob says Jorginho is a tempo setter, just ain't got the legs. And he hasn't had them. So what do you expect? And honestly, like I think he pulled down Alanga, he pulled him down because we got beat on that side. And that's all he could do was the cynical foul. So it was either that or just let Alanga run into the box. And the second foul that he got called for wasn't even a foul. He got the ball. So yeah, just say you don't like Jorginho. Boy says the main reason we aren't spending the money we should is because we sell poorly. Marco says, to me, it's simple. If Mikel thinks the team will mostly sit back, play the ballers, Tross, Partey, Odegaard, Nwaneri, and Jesus. Otherwise, playing City, Liverpool, Madrid, Barca, play Nelly Havertz. Kind of get what you're saying there. Boy says Jorginho can be played with Rice to cover his legs. I mean, we played really. I'm sorry, but erasure like 2024 or January through April of 2024 erasure is the funniest thing in this fan base. They're just because there's too many players that people don't like that played well in that period that we pretend like it never happened. It did. And Jorginho and Rice were some of the main characters in it, as well as Havertz and Trossard. So we can play good football with those players. You just have to have them in the right positions. I don't really understand why when Rice and Partey play together, Arteta doesn't put them closer together. I don't understand that. Rice is so far away from him that when we get beat, it's just like Partey's on an island by himself, and we know that he's not stopping transitions. So, yeah, I don't really understand why we don't do the exact same thing that we do with Jorginho and Rice with Partey and Rice. He does different things. It's not the same. It's just not the same. It's weird. Blaze says, I'm not comparing Jorginho to him, but neither Busquets had legs in his prime. He dominated midfield with IQ and intelligence. So why some Arsenal fans are obsessed with pace? Because it's the only thing you can ding him on. It's like all of a sudden intelligence doesn't matter. It's just if you're athletic, it's just, listen, Jorginho is not hurting us. He played well, and I think people overreacted to his inclusion in the 11. I said it during my watch along that I wasn't worried about Marino and Jorginho. They're two experienced players that are playing in their natural position and will do well with each other. And they have Odegaard, and they were really, really good. The first half was, we were playing with our food, but we were really, really good in the first half. We after we got the second goal early on in the second half, we kind of, fell back or whatever, and we didn't really attack as much. But that first half, we were cooking, and a lot of that was Jorginho. I don't know why people lie about him. I don't, because he's not hurting us. He's going to leave at the end of the season. Maybe it's because they feel like if he does too well, that will keep him, but he's leaving, you know? Shamaria says facts. Marco says Jess, when you get on Judge Mo's show, start praising Jorginho. That combo will go well. Honestly, I don't care. If you don't like certain players, then you just don't like certain players. And Judge Mo does not like him. But do I disagree that he's like this awful player? Yeah, I don't think Jorginho's an awful player. I just don't think he's anyone that's going to take us up a level at this stage, you know? So him coming in and playing against Nottingham Forest and doing well is good for us. So I don't understand why we have to like rewrite it like it wasn't good. He played well. Doesn't have to start tomorrow. Boy says things aren't obvious until after the fact. The club had a vision and Saliba had to be sold to realize it. Then I would be on board. Say we replace him with Diamande and then trust Diamande. What y'all talking about? Jacob says, Jess, I've been hearing Saka hasn't been performing. Apparently, this has been Saka best season, seems inevitable. I mean, the funny thing about Saka is that I thought last season his performances they didn't mesh with his metrics. I thought his performances, he always is going to get the GA. He has that he has that Salah thing because Salah has bad games, but he always comes up with the GA. But I think Saka, his performances today, like now, are marrying with the GA, and so it's harder to deny how good he is than like last season. Last season was odd. Like I feel like he was mostly not fit during that season, and there were too many parts of the season where we weren't playing well, and it was a lot. This season, Saka came into the season like a player that had a point to prove, and I think he's proving it. So I've always felt like Saka is world class, and I still feel that way. I think he performs like it. I think he's top 3 in his position for multiple years. The stats, the performances are marrying up, club and country, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I rate him highly. And when he's playing well and Odegaard is playing well, we're playing well. There are top players for a reason, especially at the top end of the pitch. So yeah, it'd just be nice if we'd add players of a similar level on the other side, and we talked about that in the last show. If you guys want to go back to watch that after this show, that I really do think that they need goal scorers or players that they can provide for, because both Odegaard and Saka are really, really good providers of, moments. They're so quality. And yes, we've added goals to their game, but getting natural goal scorers in this team or natural X factor attackers next to them, at least one, will take their whole, game up a level, because we've seen what the drop off is from the team when you don't have those players in there. They make the Trossards and the Kais and those players look better. Um, you know, Ivy says sometimes you just need the intelligence over legs. And it's Jorginho as your third DM is never a problem. It's just never a problem, especially when next season he won't be here. And maybe those minutes will go to MLS, or somebody like that. So yeah, I think he's doing good. I think it's fine. Marco says, I'm okay with Jorginho. He is who he is. I'm fine with that. And that's the thing, is if there's the characteristics of a player. And so like let me find a good example. If a player is like really good at one thing or they're known for something, but that they don't have the other thing, you can't really ding them for it. And I feel like saying that Jorginho needed to be saved from himself is just almost like putting too much on it. We got beat. He had to foul in transition. Otherwise, he was just going to let Alanga run. And you guys know you wouldn't have been happy with that because he would have been in the box. So he did that. And the second foul I didn't think it was a foul. And on rewatch, I rewatched it multiple times. I still don't think it was a foul. But Arteta was smart. And instead of keeping him on, he took him out. Saying that he needed to be saved from himself because he's so bad defensively is putting too much on it. He got a really good half. He was the third best player on the pitch, in my opinion, in that first half. So, and this is somebody who did not want Jorginho. So it's fine. Like, he's not going to start over your favorite if that's what you're afraid of. Legume says Ethan is so good. Ethan is very good. I didn't know he had a younger brother that was at Arsenal. That's crazy. Another little, was his name Emerson or something like that? Emerson Winyeri or something? That's great. Victor says you can see it in his celebration. Saka is acting like him now, and I love it. Andrew says Marino has been good in the last few games. But I'm not gonna I'm not saying you, Andrew, but I'm not gonna let you do the thing. I'm not gonna let y'all do after you guys said Marino was shit after those first couple of games because he was just getting used to the team, then turn around and use Marino to bang Rice. Like, no, there's just no way. Sorry. You guys are not gonna get away with the nonsense. Sorry. Because nobody wanted this team to start, and then all of a sudden Kai and Rice can't get back into the team. They will start against Sporting. So let's do our lineup for Sporting, which is a really, really massive game. And luckily, not luckily, I won't say that. I think that that's not right. I'm happy that it worked out for Mikel, that he was able to rest players and, because we asked for, the squad players to start earning their paychecks, right? Or I at least asked for it. I was like, we need to play good football. We need the squad players to do their job. And they did. Trossard played well. Jesus did all right. Raheem Sterling got an assist. Wanyeri scored. So not like I was worried about Wanyeri, but when you think about okay, so we had the squad players, they came on and they contributed. That's great. And now we can look at the Sporting game, and in the Champions League, we really need to finish in that top 8. Not only because like we should be in that group, but because we don't want those extra games. And so yeah, it's really important that we nick something away from home. Sporting is second in the table, and we are 12th. They have 10 points and we have 7. So a win puts us in a really, really good position, because we've nicked some points off of them. And everybody was saying we just had to win the home games. No, we can't just win the home games. We need to win one of these big games. We sputtered against Inter. We were really bad against Atalanta and lucky to get the point. So we need to hit one of these big teams away from home. Because just winning the home games, I don't know if it will be enough, So getting 3 points against Sporting could be invaluable to us. Because again, we do not want to have to play those additional games. And look at we want to be in that group. I would imagine at the end of this, Real Madrid will be up there somewhere, because you have to look. I'm looking below too, and I'm looking at these other teams. I'm thinking, Real Madrid have 6 points, we have 7. They're starting to look better now. They'll probably win some games. Bayern will nick some points too. We want to be in that group. We don't want to be playing them extra games. So this is an important game. So, and we got Nottingham Forest out of the way. So we really, have to put our best foot forward. And what does putting our best foot forward look like? Away from home against a good side. Does it mean, starting Rice and Kai, or does it mean not, because we played well against Nottingham Forest without them? I think you have to play Rice and Kai in this game. I think they have big moments in big games, and they're the types of players that won't be shook away from home against Sporting. I don't think Jesus did enough to keep his spot. I think you have to go with Rice for transitions and a little bit more physicality. So I'm going with Rice. Again, big moments, somebody that you can rely upon, and your best backline, But you guys can argue with me if you guys want, because I know you guys will. But this is a big game. And I've been very disappointed with how we've performed away from home in the Champions League. At home, we've done all right. We beat PSG, we beat Shakhtar. But away from home, we've been shocking. I can't lie. That Inter game was not great, so, and I know people were saying we were all right, but I just thought we lacked so much in that game. So Lopetegui, he beat Newcastle. That's crazy. So obviously Raya, and I don't know if you guys are peeping Raya, but his passing out from the back in these last couple of games is well, actually just the Nottingham Forest game. We should be utilizing that so much more. I know when Kai's out there we go long, but we can be a little bit more inventive even with Kai on the pitch because Kai doesn't have to be involved in build up if he's playing up front, right? I really think Raya is a really top level goalkeeper. Goalkeeper. I think we can firmly put some of the conversations around Emmy and stuff like that behind us now. I think this is not Ramsdale. This is David Raya. I think at some point he'll end up being Spain's number one as well. I think he's that good. So we found our guy, and it's just nice to put something behind us, to not have questions. Because the whole time with Ramsdale, I swear, like the second year, not the first year, but the second year, I was like, okay, we're going to have to upgrade on him because he just had too many scary moments. He was too inconsistent and he had that bozo gene. But with Raya, I just feel so much more confident, and yes, he's short, but he doesn't make you feel like you have a short ass goalkeeper, like he just has it, So Alex was saying from a different knock that, you know, he might go down as one of the best signings in the like Arteta era. And I think he's right up there value for money with Gabriel and Odegaard. And like I said, our sweet spot really is that 30 million pound range, 25 to 30 million pounds. I feel like our best players have kind of come in that range. I think once we start getting those inflated prices, you have more questions. But like Saliba was 27 million, Raya 27 million, Gabrielle like 27 million, Odegaard 30 million. So those are some of our best players. We ain't got no questions about those guys. Obviously, got Saka from the academy. I like that price range, because we get a lot of value for money in that price range. But yeah, Raya's been he's been so clean this season, and he just has so much um he has so much range. I think that's what I really like about him. Um, he can do so many different things. Um, Jacob says, "Yeah, Chelsea City have been worse than us performance-wise, just been getting results." You guys are talking about the league, I think. Shamaria says he is, and some of our fans take him for granted. I know how he started was whatever, but I think we can put that behind us now. I think certain things we could just be like, okay, that was just the beginning, and we're past that now. I think we're really like beyond that now, and we can fully focus on this being our number one goalkeeper. I think he's shown enough, but you know, there'll always be people that are ready to jump on him because they wanted to keep Ramsdale or whatever, but it's okay to be wrong. Victor says if we land out of the top 8 and have to do the playoffs, I don't want to see anyone complaining about full schedules from the manager to certain fans. Some of these fans have been underrating the UCL. Well, when I said that Atalanta result was not good, people were like, we just have to win at home. And I'm like, do you guys not know how football works? You can't just win at home. You have to beat some of these teams away from home. And we have difficult games away from home. And so not getting the 3 points against Atalanta when Atalanta didn't even have to play well to get a point, and they almost got all 3, was not good. We barely beat Shakhtar at home, so we do have to kind of shape up a little bit, but them extra 2 games, we do not want those extra 2 games. The calendar is as full as it needs to be, so, and we should be comfortably in that top 8, in my opinion. I feel if we're the team that everybody says we are, we should be in the top 8. So yeah, Inter didn't really have to do much to beat us either. They just had to defend crosses, which is an experienced, well-drilled Italian team, and we're just just doing crosses all day long. We need to show up in this game. But yeah, the I don't know where we get off thinking that the Champions League is just gonna let us get into the top 8. We have to earn it. And that's going to mean that we're going to have to win some of these, at least one of these games away from home. Shamaria says, I gave the Atalanta game a pass because it was sandwiched between Spurs and City away. I didn't. Jacob says, Raya didn't even start that bad. People were just hurt about Ramsdale. Yeah, you guys know I was in the Raya Wars, so, and, you know, there's plenty of videos of me getting absolutely destroyed because I said from the very beginning that it wasn't even a contest between Ramsdale and it's if you've actually been watching the football, you know? But either way, we're beyond that now. Obviously, Gabrielle and Saliba, they look like themselves again, if that makes sense, as a pairing. There's been moments where, Saliba's look good or Gabrielle's look good, but against Nottingham Forest as a unit, we didn't look like conceding at all, and it's been a long time since I felt that way. Um, we had really lost our standards. We had really stopped doing the basics. We were giving away a lot of easy shots, not defending on set pieces, letting people just get into the box and just do whatever. And so it was nice to see them both on their A game and looking like the center back pairing that we know them to be. I don't think they dropped off a lot. I just think like even a 2% drop off, can be enough to see what we saw. So or see what we've seen. So yeah, they keep their positions. Obviously, Timber, who I actually think had an underrated game against Nottingham Forest. One thing that he really needs to work on is his kind of like cuteness in and around those attacking areas. I think he's probably not used to getting so many touches in the box, which makes sense because he's a defender. But when you're playing right back for Arsenal, like Ben, he was in and around those areas a lot, and he had to learn how to refine his game around with Odegaard and Saka because you get those little touches and you have to be able to pick out those right passes because sometimes you are the final pass. That's where Timber needs to improve his game. I think that's probably the one thing about him that I'm like, yeah, that's the area of improvement. But in terms of like how he locks down the wingers, how, he everything from like the build up and all that, how he's like really confident on the ball, all those things are really great. It's just improving in the final third. He's such a good player and he's still very young. Like again, he wasn't quite in that 27-30 million pound range, but he was closer to like 40. But yeah, I mean, we're talking like a player that can cover multiple positions at a high level. Timber, yeah, he's solid. Calafiori, I'm really happy that he didn't play the whole time against Nottingham Forest because we know he's really important to the left-hand side and he's been dealing with injuries. But another player that I thought had a really good game against Nottingham Forest and also showed restraint where maybe in games gone past he had been a little bit too eager to go forward, too eager to make the tackle, too eager to show what he can do. You saw more restraint against Nottingham Forest. He can do it. He's only 22. He's younger than Saka. Don't know what all the rigmarole was about, all the conversations around, "Oh, just bring Zinchenko back in." Y'all hate Zinchenko. Asking for Zinchenko back in the team is insane. I can't wait for Tommy to come back. What? This is the type of player that Man City signs, Real Madrid signs. I think somebody in the comment section said this a couple days ago, but I really agreed with it. He's that type of X factor player that they would have in their team. The fact that we have this player and Juventus doesn't, and they just had to sign Skriniar on a free. Listen, he has some rough around the edges. He, has some moments, but Calafiori is not a player that we need to be worried about. I forget if you said this in the comment section the other day, please claim it. But somebody said that the summer transfer window was a 5 out of 10, mostly due to him. And I totally agree with that. Calafiori, this is our best back line and he makes it. He's fine. He's good. Let's see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Boy says Zinchenko was meant to have been sold for a packet of peanuts. Victor says Calafiori is a maverick in defense. He's raw, but if we polish him, he will be insane. Iris says Calafiori is present and the future man. Bun Zinchenko. Marco says like Theo Hernandez, Hakimi, not the same quality yet though. We need those fullbacks. Cala is great. Shamara says people want Cala to be shit so bad. They want him to be restrained so that, because Arteta's got them into the safe mindset. We have went so safe for so long, I feel like people are afraid of players that do things outside of the box. And so after a whole year of playing a lot more restrained, to have a wild stallion in the freaking team just doing shit, it just like rocked a lot of the fan base because they're so afraid of conceding goals. And I'm like, listen, we need to let go just a little bit because um, the only way that you can create and score goals and be good is if you risk. And Calafiore is probably risking a little bit too much at the beginning, but you can see that like if you get him back to like the middle, get him to an even like neutral stance, the guy is just he adds so much to that position, that something that Tommy can't do, something that Kiwior can't do, something that Timber can't do in that position. Um, People were saying that he couldn't play left back, and I was just like, of course he can play left back in the system, you know? Um, and I understand that he had some moments, but I think it was more trauma from our left back, you know, and Zinchenko and even Kiwior maybe too, having really bad moments in defensive areas. So I kind of get it. But people wrote him off way too soon. Um, Let's see. Jacob says, Jess, I was in the same camp. It was so easy to see. I think you're talking about Raya. Legume says Marino, Deca, and Odegaard. Mako says composure. Burmese says AFC need to make a statement in the UCL games. The performances have not been good, minus the PSG game. They need to show up and show out. And wouldn't it be nice to have one of those like memorable away games in Europe? You know, having great home games in Europe is fine, but the ones you really remember are the ones where you go to somebody else's patch and absolutely play them off the park. And we don't have those because we don't show up in Europe. We don't show ourselves in Europe. We're very timid and afraid to make mistakes. And I think if we had let go even just a little bit against Bayern, we would have made more chances, but we were so afraid to concede that we conceded anyway and then couldn't we had almost like what game was it where we conceded and then we just could not start to try to attack again? I think it was Newcastle where they scored early and we never looked like getting back into that game. It was just like a malaise. And that happened against Bayern. They scored in like the 70th minute. Kimmich scored that goal, and we just never looked like getting back into that game. And I think it's when you have such a your posture is so much like defensive, don't want to give it up. Then when you're asked to try to like attack, you just don't have it in you. And so I think in order to have a game like that in Europe, you kind of have to show yourself and be willing to risk and believe that even if you concede, you don't want to concede, but even if you do, you can come back and score. We've lost a little bit of that. But in Europe, when I'm watching these games, you don't see people just defending and being all like stiff. People are showing their quality. And I think in Europe, more than any other competition, the only way to really like it really separates the good system teams from the talent. And I don't think we show enough of our talent. I actually think our team is more talented than we think it is. Still needs additions, but we don't even show half of what we can do in Europe. This is another really good opportunity to have a big, like you said, a good like a big statement in the Champions League. And we'll see because you can't just be afraid that Jokeris is going to run down and score. He's probably going to score anyway. So at least give yourself an opportunity to score back, you know? Jacob says Timber is better than White. No disrespect, just has so much more to his game. Bhoy says Timber plays like he had real aspirations to become a winger. Let him cook. Victor says it's easy to notice defensive weaknesses when the attack isn't doing their job. Barcelona always concede goals and chances, but they just score so much that people don't talk about it. Shamaria says people forget Timber and Calafiore are like 22, 23, very young. Mr. Happy says Diamande average CB. He's a weak spot we need to exploit. Jacob says Timber was a 10 at Ajax in youth football, apparently. Jacob says he was less rash. I think you're talking about Calafiore. Shamaria says people want Cala to be shit so bad. I think I read that one out. It's funny. Victor says, I'm convinced all Calafiore haters are bald. It's like with so many players that just kind of do what the manager wants them to do. And we're kind of like a very rigid system. It was really nice to see somebody that goal doesn't happen with that goal against Man City doesn't happen with any other left back in our team because nobody shoots. Nobody would ever shoot from there. And I just think you have to have a little bit of that unpredictability and that little bit of audacity and personality. And we could use more of that because you don't see half of the personality that our team has. You always, especially like our new players, when they first come in, you can see it. And then as time goes on, you can see it being coached out of them. Arteta has a little bit of that pep in him where you can have that, but he kind of like will coach it out of you. We need to allow players to use their instinct a little bit more, I think. Blaze says some Arsenal fans are more attached to Ramsdale than our legends Ian Wright, Henry, and Pires, which is weird for me. Raya has been good this season, so I don't get why fans are complaining. Burmy says, love him. He is bold. Let's see. Mats Vita says, I wish our attackers were as ballsy as Kala, which goes to my point. They should show a little bit more of themselves. Like Saka, when he lets go, he gets more central when he acts like he's him. Most of the things that we've seen this season, he's so much better than when he's just doing the same thing over and over again. A lot of our players get really repetitive in those attacking positions, and they just need to be able to create a little bit more, But Kala is fantastic. Mr. Happy says Kala is class. Opposition don't know what to do with him. And Blaze says people need to understand this is the second year of the team playing in the CL. When they will have more experience, we will see more convincing win at away games. I agree and I disagree, Blaze, because the Aston Villa team didn't necessarily have that much experience and were able to have a big win against Bayern. So I actually don't think it's about experience. I don't think this team lacks the experience to have a big away win against. We're not talking about them having a big away win against Real Madrid. We're talking about a big away win against an underperforming Bayern, a big away win against Atalanta, a big away win against Inter. Good team, but beatable still. Big away win, against Sporting. So we're not asking them to do something that I still think that we don't have enough big away wins against teams that we could beat away from home. And I'm not saying that it should happen every time, but we lack them because we are very timid away from home, whether that's in the Premier League or in the Champions League, even Europa League. So I actually don't think it's an experience thing. I think it's more of like a Arteta being afraid to let go thing, but I kind of get what you're saying. That it could be an experience thing. There's 400 of you guys watching. Like and subscribe. Let's get into midfield. Let's see, is this Odie? I'm so happy Odegaard is back because life was like gray without him. I'll be so real. Watching us without him is not fun. But if you didn't know how important Odegaard is to this team, now you know. He just is. Should he be that important? Should it be a Rodri-esque, collapse? Because that's pretty much we were in the same free fall as Manchester City are without Rodri now. And some of that is failure in recruitment because all of their midfield is like a combined age of 206, which we can also say that we've had some recruitment failure too. So yes, you can have a player that you can't replicate the quality for and you absolutely feel their absence, but recruitment failure will also leave you in a position where that damage is so big that you cannot win a game. Because before Odegaard got back into the team, we couldn't win a game. We were really struggling to win games outside of really bad teams at home. So yeah, I think if you didn't know, now you know. He's the difference. Him and Saka are the difference for sure. So yeah, let's put in Saka too, because the other ones I think we can debate a little bit more. But like all of these 4 positions, I think we can debate a little bit more. on them, like who you'd want to see. Because some people feel like the only way to keep this good vibe and the technicians and all that is to, not play Kai, or, if you want to play like you did against Nottingham Forest, don't play Rice or Kai. But Sporting are a physical side and we're going to be away from home. So do you really want to play a team full of small technicians and not your natural starters that, have big moments in big games? Because again, Jesus doesn't score in big games. But Kai can, so what do you want to see? So for your left center mid and your DM, you guys get in the comment section or the chat and let me know who you guys want to see. Do you want Marino and Partey? Do you want to see Partey and Rice? Do you want to see Ethan and Partey? Do you want to see Ethan and Rice? That's also an option that we probably won't see, but should be a viable option, considering that Ethan is very much so knocking on the door. And, I don't think Ethan is as far away as Arteta makes it seem, but I know Arteta wants to be, careful with him, but I think Ethan is ready. He sat Mario on his ass, and that was just like all I really needed to see. The guy is not afraid. The biggest thing for young players, I think, is are they physically able to deal with the physicality, and do they have the confidence to actually receive the ball in pressurized situations and not just give it up or hide. And I think Ethan has the type of personality not to hide. And I also think he's stockier and more like physically capable to play at the highest level now. So he's probably the least likely to start, but maybe you have a reason. And I want to hear your guys' reasons too, because after the Nottingham Forest game, a lot of people were saying that he should be starting, and that there's room to play Odegaard plus Ethan. I would love to see it. Um, I would love to see it. And with two senior midfielders next to him, I don't see why he would collapse the entire 11. I really don't. So, yeah, I would love to know what you guys are thinking. Jacob says Wanyeri is getting the Foden minutes, give it time. Boy says Rice and Wanyeri do it. Boy says surprise Partey isn't getting his usual shouts. Marco says Rice and Marino. Jacob says Rice, Marino, Trossard, Havertz. Iras. I don't know if it's Iras or Iris. I could be still saying it wrong, but Odegaard was class, man. He could have made someone's grandma look good on that pitch on Saturday. And I even saw, people still doing up their usual. He was just passing it to Saka, or it was Saka's way. But I think those people are missing like brain cells, to be honest. I just don't. The footballing world recognizes Odegaard as our best or our second best player. Outside of Arsenal, Odegaard is our most highly rated player. I think he's rated more than Saka. And I think because he has that little bit of flair and that little bit of finesse, and we completely collapsed without him. Now, if we had Odegaard and we didn't have, because we've only seen our team without Saka for like 1 or 2 games. So 5, 6, 7 games, it could be a similar collapse, but we just can't do shit without him. And it's not fun to watch without Odegaard. And he doesn't just pass it to Saka. He does so much more than that. And yeah, he's brilliant. And him and Wanyeri are very different. Wanyeri's always looking for the shot. And I know a lot of people would like Odegaard to shoot more, but I think Odegaard is just a natural creator, and it could be useful to have a shooter on the other side. Like, as much as I hate him because he plays for a rival team, it would not hurt for Arsenal to have a Cole Palmer on the other side, somebody who's always looking to shoot. He does have the creative abilities, but he's always looking to shoot. And so Ethan plus Odegaard probably has the right balance for certain games, so that we're not trying to force Odegaard to be something he's not, and if Wanyeri is not somebody that, is going to provide as many creative moments, Odegaard offsets that, so Wanyeri definitely has it for sure. So yeah, let's see. Boy says Pepe could swear Pepe was going to kidnap Odegaard the way he was looking at Odegaard last season at the coin toss against Porto. Blaze says, let's be realistic. Our midfield tomorrow will be Partey, Rice, and Odegaard. Listen, I want to know what you guys think. we know that Arteta might go with his old standard, but I want to know what you guys think because fan opinion does matter. So if you think we should do something different, I want to hear it, whether or not that's actually what comes to fruition. Mr. Happy says, but Odegaard is holding Saka back. Big Smoke says, why can't we score 4 or 5 goals like Spurs? Why can't we do lethal counterattacks? Well, you guys don't want players that are good on the counterattack because you guys don't want players that are good on transition. Because every time we're linked to somebody that is really good on transition, you guys say, well, we don't play like that. We don't play like that because we're shit at counterattacking. So that's part of it. And Spurs play attacking football all the time, and we play reserved. And so more times than not, we will beat top 6 opposition because we're solid, but we'll struggle to find games where we beat the opposition by 4 or 5 goals, especially good teams, because we just don't attack enough. We just don't attack enough, especially away from home. So, yeah, look at our record versus Spurs record against top 6 teams. Most of the time they beat Manchester City or they'll beat Chelsea or whatever, but we have more consistent because we're more solid. So, Arteta's always going to go with the percentages, which is what I talked about with James on our show last week. Is he has it down to like a science of like, well, if we do this most times, we will get this amount of points. Arteta doesn't care about satisfying our need to slap up a rival away from home. He'd rather win most games 1-0 and, our tie at the Etihad but get wins in other top 6 games than get the odd 4 or 5 goals. Because we can score 4 or 5 goals against other teams. We've done it before at the back end of last season, so we know we can do it. But against like our rivals, that's not going to happen unless we attack more. And the repercussions of that is that you could get slapped on the other end, and Arteta doesn't want that. So that's why. And also, Arsenal fans are always talking about, but he's only good on the counterattack. Well, if you don't have players that are good on the counterattack, you're not going to be good at counterattacking. So you might want a Gyökeres that's good on the counterattack. You know what I mean? But that's neither here nor there. That's more from the conversation from earlier. Mr. Happy says we put 3 past Spurs last season away. I think it's different because, we're talking about like 3-0 is whatever, but 4 or 5 is different. That's like a slap, like a super slap. So I get what he's saying about 4 or 5, but 3 is a good score. Victor says each play style has its pros and cons. We're far better team than Spurs, but we won't be giving 4-0 to Man City. At the same time, we won't be capitulating against Ipswich. And that's pretty much the point that I was trying to make. Arteta has things down to a science. He's like, well, if we get into the box this amount of times or we make this amount of crosses, we will score this amount of goals. And if we don't, it's just because we were unlucky on the day. So yeah. But a lot of you guys said you want Marino and Rice, which I'm actually surprised about that too, to be honest. But let's say that, we want to be able to change the game. I think also you have to think about that. I think if you really want to change the game, that you'll start off with probably Partey and Rice and then have Marino to bring off of the bench, just in case you want to do something different. I don't know if Arteta really will want to, but maybe Rice re-injures his toe or you're looking to be able to open up the left-hand side. I doubt that he would ever sub Rice or Partey off, but Marino's probably a better option to change the game. I think this is what we'll go with. And I mean, I just think that Rice has big moments and, on transition with a good transitional team in Sporting, you want somebody that can actually stop those. So Rice to me is a better option now. And because of that, I'm also thinking of the forward line. Jesus didn't do enough to keep that spot for me. So whether we like the football better or not, I think Kai Havertz has to come back in. He also played well for Germany, so maybe he's out of his bad stint. He had a smelly little stint there where he wasn't looking that great. We know he can play better than that. So Kai Havertz comes back in, but the left wing for me has to change because as much as I want to see Martinelli with Calafiori, I just think if you start Rice at left center mid and you have Havertz, Martinelli and Havertz do not combine, and Trossard and Havertz play better together. And Trossard also plays better with Rice. I think that's been proven time and time again. So also to change the game, then you'll be able to bring on Martinelli, you'll be able to bring on Jesus. Those are players that can change the game and do something different. But this is what I'm going to go with. This is how I would go. Now, do I think Arteta is going to start Martinelli? Yes. Do I think that that left side is going to smell? Yes, I do. I can count on one hand the amount of times that Kai Havertz and Martinelli have combined, and I think what Arteta does to compensate from that is he makes his left center mid play higher for some reason to give another player in the left half space, but it just all smells. It just does when it's Martinelli, Rice, and Kai Havertz. It just all smells. It just doesn't work, even with Calafiori in. So I'm gonna go with Trossard because he doesn't need as much help as Martinelli does. But yeah, this is also Trossard big goals in Europe. So you also have that. So that's what I'm gonna go with. Mob says Trossard and Kai don't work either. They do. They absolutely do work. If you think back to when we were actually playing well in 2024, a lot of our goals were Trossard and Kai Havertz, and they were both playing in that team. Trossard was playing left wing, and Kai Havertz was playing center forward, and they were swapping positions. It hasn't worked early on in the season, but they were playing a different position, and there was no Odegaard. So with Odegaard there, it doesn't have as much of like an emphasis for Trossard to be our main creative focal point. And so it absolutely does work. Even if you go all the way back to preseason of last season when we played against Barcelona, Kai Havertz and Trossard play well in that game together. So it's actually a tried and true combination of Kai and Trossard. Martinelli and Kai Havertz don't work together. There's no like real evidence of them working together, but there's plenty of evidence of Kai and Trossard working together. Just like Mr. Happy says, PSG game, they were class. The main difference is that you have to have Odegaard in there. You have to have Odegaard in there. So yeah. But even if you say that like Trossard and Kai don't work together, nothing works worse than Kai and Martinelli. So if you think Trossard and Kai is bad, Martinelli and Kai is even worse. So, because they don't combine, they don't play well together at all. So, yeah, I think Martinelli and Jesus were a much better combination. And you said, so where was Trossard Saturday? I mean, Trossard played though. He was on the pitch and he played well. So, I mean, here's the thing. If you're mad at Trossard and you still don't think he should be playing, that's a much different conversation than whether him and Kai Havertz work together, which is I feel like what you're getting to. I think if you're saying, so where was Trossard on Saturday? You don't like Trossard or you don't think he's a good player. So just say you'd rather Martinelli start because you don't want Trossard to start, but Trossard and Kai do work together. There's too many examples of it. And there's like no examples of Kai Havertz and Martinelli working well together. So just say you just want Martinelli to play because you don't think Trossard is good enough, or you don't think you don't think he should be starting. That's a much different conversation. But Trossard was also good against Nottingham Forest on Saturday. So, he wasn't as good as Martinelli as good as Martin Odegaard or Saka, but he was good. So, yeah, Jacob says Trossard and Havertz combo was great. West Ham game comes to mind. Yeah, there's just too many examples of it. Blaze says Martinelli fans hating so much on Trossard. Listen, there's nobody that hates Trossard more than a Martinelli fan, and I get it because when we even suggested at the beginning of not this season, but the season prior that Trossard should be starting because Trossard had a really good preseason and Martinelli was not good in preseason, and I thought Trossard should have started that season, but Martinelli got the starts and was stinking up the joint. And me and a lot of other fans were like, Trossard should just start. And it's so funny. And ever since then, people have had a absolute problem with Trossard. And I'm just like, it's not Trossard's fault that Martinelli is not playing well. Trossard having bad games is on him, so there is that. But, you see Trossard a lot more because Martinelli's not playing particularly well. So, yeah. But if you just prefer Martinelli, just say that. But like fundamentally, Kai and Trossard is a much better combination than Martinelli and Kai Havertz. So yeah. Marco says, not true. I'm the CEO of the Nelly fan club. I like Trossard. Listen, you're one. I mean, listen. I remember when people, but that's usually because we as Arsenal fans, we usually like almost everyone. It's very rare that you don't like another player. But I think a lot of times a dislike for a player comes from the want of your player to be playing. And that player plays in the same position as your player. So a lot of hate for Martin Odegaard stemmed from people thinking that Emil should be playing right center mid, right? So a lot of Trossard hate comes from Martinelli fans feeling like Trossard actually did the thing that nobody thought he could, which is start over Martinelli all of last season. So a lot of hate for certain players stems from them playing in similar positions. But I think, when it boils down to it, we just need the best player to play. And if I'm looking at it objectively, I don't think that Nelly and Havertz play well together. Um, you know, Mr. Happy says Partey fanboys hate Rice. I mean, it all stems from that. Rice played, people didn't believe that Rice was coming in to play DM. And people were like, well, what does that mean for Partey? Partey gets injured at the early part of the season. Rice plays really good the entire season. And Partey fans have had a gnat up their ass ever since then. Most of the time it stems from my player plays in that position, right? So Jess, do Trossard play better when he starts or when he comes off of the bench? I think he has plenty of games where he started and actually played well. And I think he has games where he's played well off of the bench too. I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. Because I mean, if you think about when he first came into the team and Jesus was not there, so Trossard played a lot through center forward. One of his best games for Arsenal was against Fulham away from home, and he got a hat trick of assists. That was when he was starting. He played well against PSG this season. He was starting. So there are games where he played well in either capacity. I think Trossard suffers more when he doesn't play in positions that suit him. And I think when he plays center forward, that's when he plays his best. So I actually think it's more about a position thing, or if he can drift central with not having to be our main creative focal point. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But listen, I'm also not going to just start Martinelli because the narrative is that Trossard can't start for us. Just say, Mal, just say you want Martinelli to start. That's, it's not that big of a deal. And Martinelli's spot is not sacred like Saka and Odegaard's. So there is always going to be debate around his position until he starts playing more consistently at a high level. So yeah, it's not a big deal, but the idea that Trossard can't start in that position doesn't make sense because he started most of the games that we played at the beginning of 2024. Them games he started. Martinelli didn't start those games because he wasn't playing well. So, like I said, there's a lot of evidence that Trossard can start with us, but I think Martinelli fans have decided that Martinelli is an out-and-out starter and he's on the same level as Saka and Odegaard, and they're finding out that he's not, and it's a hard reality to take. He's not that guy. Bhoy says we should be starting Sterling at left wing, to be honest. You know what I'm happy about? I'm happy that Sterling contributed against Nottingham Forest, because it was getting to the point where it was like, is this going to be a total flop? Do we need to send him back in January? And I don't think there's any world where I would sign Sterling permanently. But you need to be able to trust your players off the bench. And he contributed with an assist, which is important. So, yeah, maybe he'll start to get more playing time soon. We have a lot of games coming thick and fast, so there's plenty of minutes to go around, and he should be getting some of them. I think in some ways, and I've done this as well, I've unfairly maybe lumped him in with Jesus, like Jesus and Sterling are shit. But Sterling has not performed well he hasn't performed to like his highest level I think more because of how he came in and no preseason and stuff like that. But yeah, like there's absolutely like a time where Sterling will come up with a big goal for us. I think we all know that. But like we play Sporting tomorrow, and then we play West Ham on Saturday away, and then we play Man United at home on Wednesday. So we have a lot of games in this period where they're coming thick and fast. And you know, West Ham away is probably another game where you could see some rotation and maybe Sterling could get some more minutes there. So, yeah, but I'm happy that he contributed in what we could see, because no matter what we think about the players that we have, they're going to have to come up with some moments. Blay says, I thought some party fans hate Jorginho more than Rice. No, they hate Rice down. Matt Vita says, have we seen a combination of Sterling on the left and Saka on the right yet? No, I don't think so, because I think Sterling's mostly come in for Saka. So I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But Sterling is better on the left. Sterling is better on the left. And so I'd like to see him there. But there's quite a few players that play there already. So Burmy says Sterling and Wanyeri is a solid combo. Look at the cup games. Boy says, I think Sterling's game is more suited to Europe. Great. Malb says, I would rather someone starts on the left, but Arteta's been trying to find that person on the left to balance it out like Saka. Jess, would you have a problem with Wanyeri in the 8? Like in the 8 position? I don't have a problem with Wanyeri starting. I think it's Odegaard plus someone. I'll say that. I think the idea that Wanyeri in where he is right now would start over Odegaard doesn't make sense, but Odegaard and Wanyeri is something I'd like to see. I wouldn't have a problem with Wanyeri starting. Wanyeri is hail end, baby. I want him to succeed. Despite what other players that I like, I want him to succeed, because I think he's really, really good. But yeah, Sterling definitely has the ability to come in and do some decent things for us. I don't know if it'll be a huge impact, but he can have some impact for sure. But yeah, like you said, Arteta has been trying to find somebody on the left. And I think it just comes down to Arteta wanted Nico Williams and couldn't get him, so we ended up with Sterling as a stopgap. But at some stage we have to address this position, and I don't think it's Trossard or Martinelli long term as the starter. I think we have to upgrade on that position. You guys know how I feel about it, but this would be my 11. I fully expect Martinelli to start in this game because I believe he was rested. So maybe we go to, this is our European lineup. And then when we go back to the Premier League against West Ham, maybe Trossard and Jesus come back in for that game. And that'll be a good way to get them some more playing time too. But this is more than good enough to really test Sporting. I really want the 3 points. I really think we need a big win away from home in Europe. I think we need to rip that Band-Aid off with this team. This is a team that we struggled with at home, and away actually, because we drew. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but we'll get to see Gyökeres, front line, center, right in front of us, see how they see how he deals with the Gabriel and Saliba center back pairing. So I'm excited for tomorrow. There won't be a watch along because I have other commitments, but there will be a post match. So look out for that. And like I said, I'll be on Judge Mo's show on Thursday. And then me and Dan Potts I'm going to do a show on his channel with a panel on Wednesday. And then he's going to do a solo show with me. So plenty of content coming. And if Diluted is still my friend, we'll do a show as well this week. I just don't know if he hates me or not. Marco says, did we have restart in that West Ham thrashing last year with Trossard and Havertz switching on and off? The one away from home? Of course it was away from home. Because we didn't beat them at home. But did Reece Nelson start in that game? Did he start? I don't know. I'm looking. We've played West Ham a lot in recent times. Because we played them in the cup too. Oh, and if you guys want Isak, you better hope that Newcastle continues to lose games, because as long as they don't make it in the Champions League, he'll probably be looking for somewhere else to go in the summer. So, not necessarily my hill to die on, but yeah, we fucking slapped them, y'all. It was, listen to these stats when we beat West Ham in February. 25 shots, 12 shots on target, 71% possession. We slapped them fucking silly. 6-0. The lineup was, actually, it was Martinelli, Trossard, and Saka, Havertz, Declan Rice, Odegaard, Kivior, Gabriel Saliba, and White, and David Raya. So Martinelli did start that game. And Trossard and Havertz were doing the switching off thing. We fucking slapped them. That was brilliant. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed it so much. Marco says, yep. Blaze says, Carabao Cup. Oh, the Carabao Cup? Yeah, Reece Nelson started that game. I always refer back to that game because that should have never happened. That should have never happened. I don't care how bad the how rotated it was. We were just not in it. Ben White had that bleach blonde hair, or that peroxide hair. It looked awful. It was all wet and weird looking. Kivior started that game. It was, I swear it was like Fabio, Emil, and like Kai midfield or some shit. Or because I think Fabio played right wing. So it was like Reece Nelson, Nketiah, or some shit like that. And Fabio at right wing or something. Jorginho, Emil, and Kai. It was some weird shit. A Trossard was into. Actually, let me find it. Because that game gave me nightmares. That game gave me absolute nightmares. I was like, how are we losing to what? I know that we're rotated. But my gosh, do you guys have to show your ass today? And this is like, part of it is Arteta still didn't keep the balance. So even if you rotate, you still have to maintain a balance, and he didn't do that. But they also didn't step up. And some of that is just like the players sometimes have to decide that they want to play and that they want to have this opportunity. And they did not show up in that game. That pissed me off so badly. It was Trossard, Nketiah, Reece Nelson, Kai Havertz, Jorginho, Vieira, Zinchenko, Gabriel, Kivior, and White. White with the own goal. I remember that. It was just atrocious. That own goal, Kudus and them were just running over us. It was really embarrassing. But in what world did Arteta think it was okay to start a midfield of Kai Havertz, Fabio Vieira, and Jorginho? I mean, that's why I was so happy when we slapped them later, because I needed that. I needed that bad. Sam says, seeing news that Eddie Howe is not going to manager at Newcastle next season, but I still doubt they will let him go in January. Blaze says that Rice goal versus West Ham always like rattled West Ham fans. Yeah, it did. Burmy says Curtis said AFC is auditioning for Gyökeres. We're auditioning for him, or he's auditioning for us. I just don't think this guy is coming to Arsenal. It'll be so real. I don't think it'll matter. I think tomorrow's game is inconsequential in terms of us getting Gyökeres. I think he's almost destined to go to Chelsea or Man United. That being said, it'll just be fun to see what he does up against a really good defense. Victor says Kai, Fabio, and Georgie is crazy work. I mean, that's an insane midfield. And you had other players available, and you still have to keep your balance, though, and he didn't do that. But there's still 400 of you guys here watching. Really appreciate it. I'm definitely going to get going because it's almost 3 p.m. and I still have tons of work to do for today. But I hope you guys enjoyed both of the streams for today. I enjoyed making them. So if you guys wanted to, you guys didn't get a chance to watch the show earlier, I would go back and watch it now, because I talked about like Isak and strikers, Mateus Cunha, as well as João Pedro and Arda Güler. So that was more of like a transfer talk. So if that's what you're interested in, you can go watch that. And I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like tomorrow is such a big game. in a way that doesn't make sense because it's just like a group stage of a Champions League game, but it just feels so big for some reason. I think recent history against them hasn't been great. Gyökeres and the fact that we just need a really big away win. So, yeah, hopefully we get it. But make sure you guys like and subscribe on your way out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.